the seed for the talk that Mike Redding gave was laid in Toronto. The seed for this panel was laid actually this year in Hawaii when Paul and I were having a few drinks over Mai Tai, and we were like, you know what would be really cool to talk about is, can the text do more? Can it do more than just give you an informational payload about some information? Can it just be a vehicle of commerce? So, Paul, not to put you on the spot, to put you on the spot, give us a foundational understanding of what it is that is conversational commerce.
Me give you guys a foundation?
Yeah.
We have 3 experts up here who know this very well.
Set the stage, if you will.
Yeah. But I'll set the stage. So, like TJ was saying, we were talking about it. We've talked about conversational commerce now for a few years. At Twilio, it is it is the most requested use case that comes across my desk, in the sense of how do we get this? It's not necessarily an approved use case. So how do we advance that? How do we get that into the market? And so it's 3 or 4 different companies a week that I engage with on this topic. So it's obviously something that's brands want it. Consumers, we expect, will have high adoption of it. But mostly, I think everybody in the room, we all understand that for text messaging, SMS, and business, we have to innovate, right? We haven't done a ton of innovation. We're talking about AI here, but from the messaging channel perspective, we haven't done a lot of innovation since before COVID. We got a nice, beautiful lift in messaging through COVID. But if we want to future-proof the channel, if we want to stay ahead of the OTP, we had WhatsApp talking today, and I personally think that they're around the corner at some point. If we want to replace some of the 2FA messaging that we feel we're going to see some attrition on eventually at some point here, how do we do that? How do we innovate? And I think conversational commerce is probably the most ready use case to help us do that.
So thank you for that context, because I'm going to start with you, Katie, because commerce starts with marketing, and you are powering the small and medium businesses of America to get excited about buying stuff. And yet, you're running into this issue where your customers do all this great work to capture that intent to buy, and then do a little cartoony run in the air and fall through the cracks when they go from one medium to another.
Yeah.
Walk us through that, how that looks.
Well, it kind of depends, because there's a lot of businesses ranging from brick and mortar to online, or a combination of both, that are looking to build that relationship with the customers. And what we really stress is that it can't just be the product push. It really does have to be more about the content to get them engaged, so that it's not just a one and done, but it's actually really not only getting the intent, driving them to purchase, but then also retaining them. So our multi-image capabilities, that's one thing that we really push heavily, so that they're putting multiple products out there to be able to make the suggestions. And then we drive through either to their website or what we offer, which is a content hub, to help drive additional engagement and sales. So
we'll double click on the content hub a little bit more, because I'm curious about that.
Sure.
But as Paul pointed out, we have 2 innovators on this panel that are pushing the envelope, if you will, for conversational commerce in different ways. So I don't know who wants to go first. Whether I'm going to throw out 2 words: text to buy and text to pay. Who wants to go that first? Take that. Go for it.
My feeling on it is that conversational commerce finally has a place to exist. I think for a long time it was looking for that right channel. So text to buy is selling products directly inside text message. Brands can sell products directly inside text. Customers can reply to make a purchase. So we are enabling direct commerce that way. Some of the use cases we're doing are product drops, product reordering, text to order from your favorite restaurant. So text to buy, text to order, and text to reorder are all relevant terms that we use. So I'll give you one example. One of our biggest clients is Estee Lauder, and they're going to sell $14 million in GMV this year through a text-to-buy program running on our platform.
Explain what GMV is for the audience.
So gross merchandise value, so $14 million in newfound money coming through a new revenue channel, new mobile commerce channel. So it's a hugely successful program, and they're using QR codes in-store to opt-in customers that then receive product drops and reply to buy. And so it's a little bit of a retail to digital transformation in this case. Yeah, that's Text to Buy in a nutshell.
And how long have you been in business doing this?
We've been doing this 4 years now.
So you very much like Teams had started during the pandemic.
It was the dawn of the pandemic that definitely accelerated the bricks and mortars fall off that everyone was seeing and ushered in a kind of an era of mobile transformation and innovation in mobile commerce.
Which brings me to you, Chris. And you also have Text to Pay trademarked. Is that correct?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, so we think of things a little bit differently, right? So we've been at this for 9 years, so a little bit longer. And I came out of the wireless space, so I understood some of the issues and some of the concerns around driving commerce through these new channels. But with us, Text to Pay is something that is, we've got a cloud-based wallet. We connected 200 payment processors and gateways. We connect with all the major messaging gateways and about 15 ERP, CRM platforms to really drive value through more your traditional channels, right? Healthcare, pharmacy, traditional billing and invoicing, veterinarian services, field services, things like that. So just making it easy for people to pay seamlessly inside of the message. But we use a 4-digit two-factor auth. It's like a two-factor auth type scenario to pay against a card that's on file. To make it a very secure, very easy, very compliant. You get a Visa compliant receipt back and you're done. People will pay within a minute of getting a text. We see 30% of the billing move up to within 5 minutes of text going out. So it's a really phenomenal tool to reach consumers where they are. And I think something Paul said early on is, I think he used the term want, right? And it's something that we see where the adoption, you're not training consumers, you're not retraining anybody. It's as simple as texting somebody in your family and then just driving an authorization to go ahead against the payment against the card on file. The numbers go through the roof. The volume is incredible. And it really, I think, is hopefully bringing value and innovation into this industry. And from there, we're now moving into signatures and being able to send your healthcare card to the doctor or be able to send your driver's license or age gating, things like that. So there's a lot of value that can come from what is really an amazing channel that this community has built over the last 25 years.
So you touched on a point about compliance, and you have the additional burden of transactional or finance payment process of compliance. And this is for the entire panel, but we'll start with you. What is the biggest learning point? Let me ask you a tongue-in-cheek question. Which compliance is harder, the finance processor or the messaging compliance?
The messaging, by far.
Okay.
Because the finance side's been doing it forever, right? So all of our KYC comes from our partners, whether it's a Chase, a Fiserv, a U.S. Bank. That KYC is already done. This side of the ledger is getting into the space now and really doing deeper KYC. We have to do our own KYC on top of that. So it is arguably the most critical part of this piece in order to keep it clean and keep it secure is to make sure that proper KYC is done.
And have you had to build process? Like, how are you working through the KYC where, you're building it in product, or are you working with partners to try and make it less friction?
It's both. We go to market primarily through the major payment companies, so a Fiserv, a Chase, a U.S. Bank. So when they bring us a partner, they already have a strict regulatory body from Visa on down and FCC about who can and can't do commerce. And so they come with a very clean list of branded clients, known entities. We have to collect some data from them, but they just pass it through in an API call. So we build a little bit of product, but it's really just to suck in the information they already have.
Katie? So do you have, talk us, especially a content hub where you're actually helping?
I mean, we don't touch any financial information. We keep it completely out of our message flows. We let the businesses handle all the transactions, whether it's through their online stores or in person, which makes it a lot easier. It's one less thing that we have to worry about. So we're just really focused on the message space when it comes to compliance.
Do you have to do any kind of KYC around your content hub? And explain to us what the content hub does.
Yeah, I mean, the content hubs are actually, so the way that it works is when you think about a lot of these larger brands and going to the homepage of a website, the homepage is not often updated, right? It's a whole conversation just to change a hero image. And so it's not current, it's not personalized. The way that our content hubs work is that the brands are able to create this content that when they push out campaigns, they can segment based on all sorts of demographic, geographic, behavioral information. And depending on how that content gets set, when I click on the link in my text, I could see something completely different than what everybody else sees. And so it's very targeted based on what makes sense. From there, you can click into the tiles, they're shareable. There's all sorts of other engagement factors that are measured, and that information is shared back. So in some cases, if they're promoting a lot of different products, but there's only one in the text, take it directly to the product page, right? Skip the content hub, it's an extra step. But if it's something where you are trying to get them to engage with multiple things or discover new stuff, that's where it really comes into play. Either way, though, even from there, if they're going to make a purchase, it drives to the website.
Yeah, so you're having to basically push, even through the content help, kind of push them off to a website.
Yeah.
And then, Blue, you came up with a creative solution, which was work with them to get on the opt-in side to get that trust in. Walk us through the compliance journey of that, like building the product.
Yeah, well, even though we are product-led growth, we have intimate relationships with the brands, and we're focusing on high-value exchanges, so this conversation is key. So it's not so much as blasting out promotions through our platform, it's more about bringing that purchase journey to the surface. So there's a certain intimacy in the kind of traffic that we interact with and the kind of messaging that we send. So we do a lot of manual grooming of all messages that go through the platform. And of course, along with Twilio, we do all of the regular opt-in CTIA compliance. On the payment side, we're also using well-trusted payment processors with tokenized vaulted credit cards, for example, that are all processed in the cloud. So we have security and data and privacy on one side, and then we have the messaging compliance on the other that's a little bit more intimate for us.
And so this is a question for both of you. Conversational commerce is not a well understood use case in North America. I think it will be over time as we get pressure from OTT and RCS, and we'll talk about RCS and OTT as well. But what got you excited about this? Like, this was not done before outside of the entrepreneurial, like I'm seeing this missing use case. What in your backgrounds got you to get excited about conversational commerce? We'll start with you, Chris, and then we'll go to Blue.
So I grew up in the wireless space. I was at Qualcomm late 90s, then ran mobile and interactive at Univision for 6 years. So I had a lot of kind of technology consumer interactions. And then in 2010, I was president of a messaging company. We rolled out the Walmart pharmacy, 4,600 locations. And we went through all these hard work. We did everything. I'm standing there sitting next to the VP at Walmart. And I'm like, why are they all queuing up? He's like, well, they still got to pay. And I'm like, but we know everything about this person that's in that line, right? We've got all their payment information. We've got everything. And it just became evident to me that what you saw in the early 2000s is the web came on, commerce came in, and the web exploded, right? You had m-commerce come into apps and mobile web, and then that exploded. And I think you're going to see the same thing you will see the same thing in conversational commerce. The difference being that with the web, back in 2002, we might have had 9 million computers, something in that neighborhood. Today, you've got 6 billion devices that are connected via SMS. So I think the opportunity around true conversational commerce globally is just massive.
So I grew up in Dallas in the 90s, and my mom used to call the local grocer and place an order over the phone. I grew up with 6 other kids, so it was a full household. And he would make a couple of recommendations. He would charge your credit card on file, and the groceries would arrive at the back door. So this is the analog conversational commerce, right? So I think I've been fascinated with that for years. I was wanting to build a digital, equivalent, the modern day equivalent of this type of conversational commerce that's seamless and smooth and productive. And I mean, I was a MarTech operator for 14 years, a CMO and CTO, and I became obsessed with mobile commerce and the mobile commerce friction. So this problem that, there's app fatigue, there's low conversion rates on mobile, you have mobile advertising clutter, and how do you solve this? How can we bring that journey of, using a channel like text, a very powerful, intimate, high-value channel, along with the problems I was seeing in mobile commerce, and kind of bringing those together and collapsing the funnel. So that's kind of my background on conversational commerce and why we're here today.
So that brings me to part 2 of this question. What was the, oh wow, this is harder than it looks? Like every entrepreneur I feel starts off with, as Jensen Huang says, is like, oh, why not do it? How hard can it be? and then you go 10 steps in or even 5 steps in, you're like, oh, this is harder than it looks. Walk me through those 4 steps, and then we'll start with you, Katie. Like, your first step was, this is harder than it looks.
Well, I started 9 years ago and had absolutely no clue what I was doing or getting myself into. I just thought that text messages should be prettier and brands should put pictures of the products that they're selling into the text. So that was pretty much what sent me down this path. Everything has been harder than I thought it would be. On the conversational side, we really have only started introducing that more into some of the larger brands. So we have some of our larger brands that are using our platform for, one-to-one, one-to-many conversational type opportunities. But for the most part, it's still, like I said, we're not touching the wallet on any of those. And it's really also about building that relationship. And so they're also using our flow builder to ask questions, to learn, and then make product suggestions and recommendations. But even that has been a very much a learning opportunity. And then it's getting people to adapt and learn with you, and being willing to take a chance on something new and different. It's outside of where their normal comfort zone is. So getting people in store to sign up for text messages about the products is very different from how Estee Lauder has sold in the past. I think it's awesome. I actually get your texts, so I didn't even realize that. But I think that there's still a struggle there with how do you do new product discovery, right? How do you get people to try something? Because when it comes to a shade of a lipstick or something like that, there's still that experience piece, which is why the brick and mortar businesses are still so important. So you also have to be able to drive the traffic that direction too. So people are changing, the way that they communicate is changing, but I think that there is still some level of discovery that is not necessarily going to be quickly served in a text.
And how about you, in terms of how hard could it be?
Yeah, how hard could it be? Yeah, I would say entrepreneurship is definitely not for everybody. Anyone that in the room that's been an entrepreneur, I'm just curious, who in the room has been an entrepreneur? That's a good number. So it's, it's your face in the wind against the world, and a lot of times you're in a lonely box just trying to create something out of nothing, right? So that's the basic job description. And yeah, you're faced with 100 projects and not enough people to manage those for you. So the journey is one of evolution and constant discovery and constantly sharpening the saw to do all the things you got to do on all the major pillars of your business.
And it costs more and takes longer, and raising money is a nightmare, and there's all of those things too.
I think, yeah, there is every challenge you can imagine, and yeah, so that's.
Chris?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
I think there's a couple things. I think the early days, compliance was the hardest part. It took me 3 years to get certified on Chase, or a couple of other major payment guys. That was probably the most painful because you're half into something and you don't even know if you've got a chance to make it work or not. I'd say the wireless side has its challenges, as we all know, right? Because they're all heavily regulated, so it's tough. The amount of integrations that we have to maintain and do on any given day is enormous. The ERP platforms, the CRM, the healthcare guys, some of these legacy platforms are so dated that what should be a 6-week integration becomes a 6-month integration. So I think early days it was the certifications and compliance. Today's it's more just about the deep integrations and the length of time that it takes to roll out a national customer and do things on scale.
So that was my lead into my real question I wanted to ask was, you are in a group of the ultimate insiders, right? And there was stuff that was hard for you to build because we didn't know you wanted to build it. That was because you were just figuring out your customer had a deal for it, right? So what would be your ask to continue innovating in this space, especially in the light of the fact that RCS will enable this natively, WhatsApp and Viber already supported. So what was tough and what could be easier? I'll start with you.
Thanks. So, as I sit up here and I listen to the 3 stories here, I think the thing that keeps coming back to me is you guys are innovators. And I think probably one of the hard things, maybe you don't even recognize this, is that what you're innovating, you're missing a big component of your product, and that's the carrier networks. Mm-hmm. And even at Twilio, we're an innovator, but we've had to clear out a lot of technical debt or product debt of it, whatever you want to call it, where we've gotten out above our ski tips, innovated, and then realized, wait a second, we've got to talk to the carriers about this. And we've had to back out and do it properly, and we probably still have some more of that stuff that we're doing. And I think that probably if you ask me, like, what would I want to leave here, accomplishing, I think that would be it. Just understanding that, like, there's part of your product design has to involve the carriers. We as Twilio and other like companies in the room have to do a better job of working with brands like yourself to connect you into that design aspect of it, so that you don't get too far out ahead of yourself and say, okay, wait a second, now we've got an idea, because we obviously have to, to get this to the goal line, we have to come up with what the guardrails are, what the KYC is going to be, and check all the, cross all the T's and dot the I's and all that stuff. And when we do that, you guys are going to likely have to make some product changes to accommodate for that. And I think that the quicker that we can start having that product conversation that involves the carriers, you can start to get some insight into, like, where is this all going to land. So just in Canada, for an example, we're building a pilot program for the Canadian carriers for this, and we're starting to work through what are all those guardrails, right? And I know what they are, and I know that companies like you are going to have to make some adjustments to deliver on that, based on, how do we keep the space a trusted space. And in the case, it's the same for U.S. carriers, but just to use an example in Canada for a second, they're not concerned about, PCI compliance, and you've got, all that security and KYC on that side. But there is concern about, like, okay, this sounds great, but how do I prevent cannabis as a disallowed content in Canada? How do I prevent the cannabis company from leveraging this? How do I prevent the gambling entity from leveraging this? Because I don't want that, right? And so we have to navigate and work through those things to get there. And I think that we as like Twilio and others, we have to be better at connecting innovators like yourself with the carriers to make sure that we get that design out ahead of time in the front.
That's actually a great point. I would love to talk about RCS, but I know we're running short of time. But we do have time for questions. So other questions in the audience?
Literally got one question in the panel.
I think you've done a great job with the SMS for running commerce, but in many markets, especially outside USA, the two-way and the rich communications offered by OTT channels, include RCS by the way, have been big drivers of conversational commerce. How do you see the rich two-way communication channels, RCS and others, playing into your strategy and your customer strategies?
By the way, I didn't plan that question. That was a perfect question, so thank you.
Yeah, like for me, there's a certain customer size where it even becomes a conversation, and we do have a lot of those smaller and mid-sized businesses where, one, conversational, they're like, we don't have the manpower to even entertain that, right? And you do have to do it well. And they're certainly not thinking as far down as RCS or some of these other channels that they're going to have to think about. And so we've really focused on, developing the product with huge, robust capabilities around MMS and what happens post-click. But it's on our roadmap for Q3 and Q4 to start diving in, because we do have customers that are across the United States and they're going to be looking for expansion outside of that. And so for me, it's time to figure out something else, and it's time. But one thing to speak on what you were saying, TJ, until you had reached out to me to be on a panel in Vegas, I didn't even know this existed, right? And so I think you're right that getting the people who are innovators and the people who have ideas and they're starting something new and making sure that they know what they need to be paying attention to is huge. I mean, all of the research, all the ways that I figured out how to follow the rules was thanks to lots and lots of reading, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's a costly lesson to learn if you don't do it well. So anything that can be done to give entrepreneurs access to the information so they don't make those mistakes is going to make it a lot easier for everybody else too.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Well,
Nope.
thank you, our panel. Keep innovating. Thank you.